On this episode of Halftone Takes, I ask Cory about his history with DC Comics. We talk about diversity in media and R-rated superhero movies.
And Blade.
And fucking Blade!
Blade is cool.
Hello and welcome to Halftone Takes, high contrast conversations where we zoom out to see the bigger picture. I am one of your hosts, Adam Bucheri. Please, the Booch was my father.
And I am the other co-host, Cory Revis, a.k.a. the Burnt Toast Man. So, what are we getting up to today, man?
Yeah, so today I wanted to talk to you about DC Comics, a topic near and dear to your heart.
Boy.
Basically wanting to cover kind of three eras. How you started becoming a fan and kind of like the nerd scene in your youth.
Oh, okay.
Being a fan of DC in college, which was kind of one of your big fandoms when we first met and got to know each other. And what it's like to be a DC fan now with the modern slate of everything that they're doing.
Okay. That is quite a journey.
Yeah, so starting out, like, as a kid, how did you get into DC in the first place? What was that scene like? And yeah, tell me about being, kind of a young nerd at that time.
Okay. That is very involved and somewhat sad, but still hopeful. As back in the day, superheroes was always cool to me, and I actually liked reading as a kid. So I picked up comics like nothing and graphic novels and stuff, and I liked all kinds of stuff, but DC was the big one because probably because of the cartoon. Justice League, really good animated cartoon. And then there was kind of the, I guess, not necessarily spinoff, but upgraded Justice League Unlimited. And
sure.
Yeah, but I watched that.
I mean, I think it's safe to say that we can kind of lump in all of the Timverse.
Yeah, the Timverse is like just expansive. Yeah,
right. So, listeners, if you're unfamiliar, that would include Batman the Animated Series, Superman, the Animated Adventures of Superman, Justice League, Batman Beyond.
Well, first of all, who is Tim?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Bruce Timm.
Yeah, we're talking about
the
Bruce.
Comics guy.
Yeah, he has a very, very unique style in terms of animation and just terms of like character design and everything. If you've seen any type of DC anything, it's probably animated DC anything, I should say. He probably has his hand in it. He has his hand in a lot of stuff like that. So, but yeah, I watched a lot of that stuff. I watched Batman Beyond. I watched Static was one of my favorite ones.
Oh yeah, Static Shock was part of that lineup.
Yep. Justice League, of course. Adventures of Superman, of course. Batman the Animated Series. All that stuff I consumed like crazy, and it seemed at the time, besides like maybe X-Men, the '90s, like the '90s version of X-Men, it was mostly all DC. That I loved. So I was like, okay, cool. And what really got me, I liked reading comics every once in a while. Because, people were still getting the single issues and stuff, and I would see them in like supermarkets and stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool. But I didn't really start going after comics and getting into them until I kind of fell in love with Justice League writing, I should say, because being as a like little black kid and not having a lot, like let's be completely honest. I wasn't really looking at that point, at least mindful, because I was a kid. I was just happy to see stuff like superheroes do cool things. But there was a subliminal thing, or subconscious thing, I should say, that happened to me when I watched Justice League because of Jon Stewart, who, if you're not familiar, audience, is the Black Green Lantern. That had the biggest impact on me because I liked Green Lantern anyway. And then I was like, oh, that's cool. And I like I said, like subconsciously latched on to him. And I was like, man, I got to read more about him. I got to see what he's in and stuff. And that's what kind of got me into DC Comics a lot more.
Gotcha.
Like DC, I actually read a lot more DC stuff. And that, then it's on from there of,
Yeah. I definitely wanted to talk about Jon Stewart specifically.
Okay. It had to have come up. It was going to come up.
Yeah, it had to. Both because, in the 90s, we were starting to get some representation, some black superheroes, some, there are a good number of female superheroes.
Yeah.
But Jon Stewart's the fucking coolest, man. He's so cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not surprised that was part of the gateway to it because, I share a lot of that where I grew up right in the pocket for all of the Timverse stuff. I loved Batman the Animated Series, loved Justice League, and yeah, Jon Stewart was a real standout character to me, to the point where I still don't like most of the other Green Lanterns. Yeah. There have been, a ton of them. I always want Jon Stewart. I don't know why they keep fucking making movies with Hal Jordan.
Now that is not. I don't think that is a. I've talked with a lot of other comic nerds and stuff too, and that is a complaint that a lot of people have because, and not for the fact that it's it's a white guy versus a black guy. No, it's just the fact that it's Hal Jordan versus everybody. It's always Hal Jordan.
He gets a disproportionate amount of screen time for how, and I'm sure that he's been good in the comics, but, all of the on-screen adaptations are just this is just kind of a guy, and I'm not that interested.
Yeah,
in him.
He is definitely, there's a reason. He's the first Earth Green Lantern, but...
Sure.
And he's basically a huge blank slate, and there's a lot of stuff that happens to him. He becomes, Parallax and does all kinds of weird nonsense shit, but it's okay. We all accept this. We all know this. However, you have plenty of this is called the Green Lantern Corps. There's so many characters that are interesting and all this kind of stuff. That's part of the point. And I always liked that Jon Stewart definitely, represented another part of Earth, another part of Earth culture. And I always thought that was obviously looking into it more and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, this is really cool. And part of that, at least on the animated front, is because of a writer named Dwayne McDuffie. Genius. Sadly, he passed, but he is. The more I looked him up, the more I realized that all this, the stuff that he wrote, all the episodes that he wrote, are my favorite episodes. And Dwayne McDuffie is a black man who also had a hand in the creation of Milestone Media, which is basically kind of I don't want to say a subsidiary of DC Comics, but that's where you get your Static. That's where you get your your Rocket and these other characters. Do they have Mr. Fantastic? I mean, Mr. Terrific? I don't remember. Mr. Terrific's also really cool. But yeah, and that totally shows, which is it's very authentic, and I appreciated that. This is why so many so much of the Black community loves Static, because it's, Static as a character he wasn't just like bald or something like that. And I'm being 100% serious about this. Like, I hear this all the time and I appreciated it too. Black hair is a big thing. So
that's a great point.
How they drew him was important. And everybody's like, yeah, he does we do wear hair like that. Wow, this family dynamic actually is understandable. Like, I was like, wow. And, of course, if you know Static at all, they tackled tough issues in that show. Sometimes I was watching it as a kid and I was like, oh, they went there, huh? Okay.
For sure.
But
also, like, it's not a show that's just about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which is, you've talked to me before about how refreshing that is. You don't want just any media featuring a Black character to be about the struggles of being a Black character. You want it to be about the struggles of someone with lightning powers kicking ass.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah, why can't we treat the Black characters with culture and also with, normalcy?
Yeah.
He's still a kid. He's still a kid growing up in, Dakota City, and, teenager going to school, dealing with stuff. He has his best friend and stuff. Like, what do we like? I always go back to that one episode where they talk about gun violence and his best friend gets shot. And I was like, at that point, it's not about him being Black. It's about literal gun violence in school. And I was like, oh, you guys are going there? Impressive. And I was like, I wasn't seeing that kind of stuff with Marvel. Now, mind you, that's a different story because Marvel just wasn't making all that much animated stuff back then, or at least stuff that wasn't good or hooky.
And I would argue that, like, Marvel has never really been great on the animated television front.
Especially not compared to, like, DC. What DC has been putting out. And to a greater extent, Warner Brothers. Because that is a Warner Brothers thing. Like, they may have really sucked and still generally have a problem with their live action stuff. But their animation stuff usually is on point. 9 times out of 10, you can trust it. And I've always looked at them that way. I'm like, I'm not really worried about your live action stuff. If you let your animation stuff slip, I will have words. But, know, it's...
Yeah, and I don't think it's a coincidence that for both of us, like, a big part of our gateway to DC Comics was through animation, and that we both ended up meeting in animation classes. Like, I think that there's logical through line with that.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, and, I mean, that's... those shows are definitely... That art style definitely influenced me in terms of why I like action animation a lot and why I care about, animated, action scenes and fight scenes. And I think a lot of that stuff was very well choreographed and set up and composed. And I think it's impressive. I think a lot of people, even artists today, really take a lot from that era, for their kind of shows and whatnot. So, yeah.
Yeah, I still love revisiting Batman the Animated Series. Some of the animation that they do in that show is, like, staggeringly good.
Mm-hmm.
The Clayface reveal.
Oh, yeah.
The climax to that Clayface episode where he's, like, shifting back and forth through all the personalities uncontrollably, like, stands out to me as just a really remarkable piece of animation in a show that, like, arguably, like, doesn't deserve to be as good as it is. Like, I feel like there's definitely, at the time, X-Men the Animated Series was, like, kind of the benchmark. Mm-hmm. And it really is difficult to understate, like, how much the Timverse in general, like, raised the bar. Because even though the art style changed throughout the years, like really high quality across the board. Justice League has great action sequences.
Let me tell you. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. And on all accounts too, because I think what people don't necessarily realize a lot, Marvel had his extended universe for a while. X-Men, the animated series, was literally Marvel's extended universe for a while. They went in deep watching that show, and I was like, whoa, you're bringing in this character? What? Like, you all know Morbius, right? He showed up in the animated series, and it made sense. They had an entire arc with him. And also in Spider-Man, the animated series, too. It was those two cartoons from Marvel.
I was going to ask, I genuinely don't know. Is there a continuity between the 90s Spider-Man show and the X-Men show?
I think there's a loose continuity. Because characters would show up in both shows. And then, mind you, a lot of it's weird because a lot of it took place in New York. So I guess that's another reason why, they would kind of flip back and forth. But Spider-Man was another one. Spider-Man, the animated series, was another hugely extended universe that, like, people would be like, what is this character? Which it also has. Yeah. I don't want to go on too much of a rant. Or too much of a nostalgia trip, but this kind of still answers your first question of how it got started. That's how I got really interested in a lot of Marvel stuff and I think I told you this before, my first introduction to Blade. Did I tell you about that?
No.
It was in Spider-Man, the animated series.
That's hilarious.
It is the most ridiculous sequence. It's when Spider-Man is on a rooftop and he meets Blade. And it's one of those things where I think he had to track down his mom or something like that. And he's like, somehow he has his motorcycle up on the roof too. And he's like, turns to Spider-Man. They're arguing and something like that. But then he's like, oh, we'll work together, but I'm not happy about it. And then he just turns to him and he's like, just brace yourself, Spider-Man. It's going to be a long night. And he drives his motorcycle off the roof, lands on like more smaller roofs, and then he drives it off, and then he lands on the street, and he just speeds away. And I was like,
That's some Devil May Cry shit.
Yeah, it was like, You had my interest, but now you have my attention. I was like, yeah, this is what I want. That was awesome. And like I said, when I was a kid, I was watching that. I was like, subconsciously, I was like, and that's a black guy. That's awesome. That's so cool. And I was like, thinking nowadays, I'm like, yeah, that was cool. And somehow that influenced me.
This is an episode about DC Comics, but like, Blade kicks so much ass.
Blade is still cool. Blade 3, Blade not rules. So much, but Blade 2 is my favorite. Blade 2 is my favorite. Wesley Snipes.
Revisiting them, I love Blade 2 because I love Del Toro, but like Blade 1 rules.
Oh, Blade 1
absolutely knocks it out of the park as far as the first modern comic book movie. R-rated.
That's also a horror movie. That's also technically a horror movie.
Slaps. Yeah. Like, it's a great movie.
Yeah. It's so good. And, it's so hopeful in my opinion, for the future, because people look back at that and say, and also like at Spawn too. That's another black superhero character. Or more anti-hero. I don't care. They're all comic superheroes. Let's not be goofy. But it's just I see those two, just those specific two, and there are many more. And I'm like, yeah, it's looking good. If people, because back then people weren't really talking about that. They maybe were, but there was an overwhelming sense of, no, this is just cool. Especially for Blade. Yeah. No, this is just cool. Especially back then when vampires and werewolves were so awesome in the culture. So
Blade was inarguably cool when it came out. Also doing like the black trench coat look before the Matrix. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And I love me some Morpheus, but still.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that is iconic. It's super iconic. And you know what? It's funny because you see any other black characters that have that kind of trench coat on, and you immediately go to one of two people, Morpheus or Blade. There is no other person that does that. So
Lance Reddick is Albert Wesker in the new Resident Evil.
I saw him.
And he comes in wearing the Wesker goofy ass trench coat.
Yeah, that kid played 90s, 80s, late 80s haircut. And I was like,
it's just Blade. Which is Blade. Not a complaint. I'm just like, damn, Lance Reddick would be a great Blade, actually.
Yeah. I love Lance Reddick anyway, but I think it's hilarious to say this, but I'm like, Lance, slow down. You have too much work. I honestly think he has a little too much work right now.
He's doing a lot of stuff, but
yeah, I'm glad they got Mahershala Ali though. Like, he's going to be a great Blade.
He's going to be great. I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, he fits it perfectly, especially for a modern take on like the MCU and whatnot. I think they'll be fine. But we're talking about DC here, so like that is basically Green Lantern, specifically Jon Stewart, is one of two of my favorite superheroes ever in all of comics. That was a huge influence. It's a huge influence. I couldn't get enough of the lore of Green Lantern stuff and just DC Universe in general. I think making up things, because what Marvel does that DC kind of doesn't do that much. Marvel likes to use real world stuff a lot, which is fine. Yeah. There is really not a lot of made up places in the Marvel universe. DC basically makes up all their stuff. Now, mind you, it's also based on specific places. Metropolis is straight up New York City. Gotham is straight up Chicago. Let's not be coy about this. And no, they are not across the river from each other like how it is in in Batman v Superman. That is super silly, and that is the biggest complaint I had about that movie.
My favorite thing.
What? They're not that close.
First of all, it is objectively funny that you can see Metropolis from Gotham, and then Superman's like, "What's a Batman?"
I hate that. I hate
shut
it.
up.
I hate it. I complained about it when I watched it. I saw that in theaters, and I was like, "What? What?"
I also think it's very funny that they have had to, someone has been like, we need to take our world a little bit more seriously, and so they have to be like, oh yeah, our planet Earth is actually 8% larger to account for all of these bullshit cities that we've put in there.
That's weird. So weird.
I think that's very funny to me that they.
So weird, man.
It's extremely weird.
Why would you?
But that's got to be true for the Marvel universe as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because where's Wakanda? Where's Sokovia? Those are analogous to real world places, but are they actually accounted for on the world map? I don't think so.
On I've looked at something years ago, like a map of the Marvel universe showing where things are, and I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. So they make it make sense. It's just, because with Wakanda, it's a little easier because that is a separate country that's hidden. What is it? Yeah. Sokovia, or what is it? Markovia? Where's Dr. Doom from? Shoot.
Sokovia is the Scarlet Witch home.
Yeah, that's Sokovia. But I'm not even thinking about. I'm thinking about where's Doctor Doom, because that is the big one. That's actually a country, city, state that has political power in Europe.
Yeah,
And I'm like, I saw it years ago, and I was like, where is it? I don't remember. Latveria, yeah. I saw it years ago, and I was like, I don't know how this is supposed to work, but okay. It's the Marvel Universe. A lot of stuff doesn't make sense, but makes perfect sense, and that's the point. But I think with DC anyway, I kind of liked how they kind of just made a lot of shit up, and were perfectly okay with that, because then they could build off of that and didn't have to rely on necessarily as much real world stuff, you know, in the world building, and I kind of appreciated that. And
yeah. I see the benefit to both approaches, but like as a kid, I preferred them not being real places and not trying to, I don't know, not trying to ground it too much. Like, because Metropolis and Gotham were their own cities, they were able to have like a stronger identity.
Yeah.
I felt like.
Yeah. And I 100% agree with that too. I mean, now, obviously, when you start getting to, you know, and I think it's also, I'm gonna start by saying I think it's also really funny and ironic, because DC has to know, these people, the writers have to know that these city names are a little ridiculous. Star City.
Oh, yeah. Like, Star City sucks.
Star City. Where's
Bloodhaven?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Bloodhaven. I'm like,
jeez.
And I'm just looking around like, You all know, you guys know what you guys are doing, right? Happy Harbor, like,
okay,
yeah. I'm like, come on, guys. But they're like, no, we're sticking with this. You're gonna be happy about it. I'm like, you know what? I'm happy about it. At least you guys aren't trying, but you guys aren't trying to try. Like, it doesn't even matter. Like, it's an identifier more than anything. You know that certain people come from Star City. You know, certain people come from Metropolis, and what have you. You know that certain people are going to be about Gotham, because it's always hilarious. Nobody goes outside of Gotham. The bad guys just think, you know what? I can only ruin things here. I can only ruin things here. I can't go over to New York, a.k.a. Metropolis, because that Superman guy will kill me. I don't have no chance with him. I'm going to stay right here and cause havoc. At least I got a chance with the Batman guy. I know he's not like super powered. He's just rich. But I want to be rich too. So
I love the idea of like Captain Cold being like, here's my new plan. I go to a bank and I freeze stuff and then I take their money. And they're just like, how is that different from every other plan? He's like, because I'm going to be doing it in Kansas City and ain't nobody around.
Yeah. And then you see Flash show up and he's like, I heard you were coming to Kansas City. And he's like, gosh, shit.
God damn it.
Because that's the point. He's a Flash villain. So you can't run. But anyway, DC Comics as a kid, it was really cool. Especially the animated stuff. Animated stuff still rocks. I love it. It's great.
Yeah. So you mentioned getting into comics as a kid. Were you... I guess here's the question. Were you as big of a comic book reader as I thought that you were? Or was it a little bit more casual?
It started out casual. I am not a collector, first and foremost. I am not a collector. I don't have the room for that. And I don't have the, I guess, patience for that, because that would mean that I would specifically have to seek out all the stuff that I'm missing. And I don't have the time for that. But I do, for the characters and the stories that I'm interested, I will most definitely go out of my way to get volumes of graphic novels and the back issues and whatnot. I will do that, and I still tend to do that. It's just a little bit harder because I am not rich, and some of these are not very rare. I am not that kind of a person, but they're rare enough that it costs a pretty penny, like $50 to $70 sometimes on like Amazon, because there's not a lot of them to go around because they're not in printing anymore. Which is what happens. You just gotta, be used to that, and that's why, single issues were such a huge thing. It's because you could get the single issue for pennies, and if you have all of them when they come out, then you don't have to worry about it anymore. And it's, having a graphic novel is great, but that's how they kind of get you sometimes. Is, it's basically a pros and cons thing. Do you want to wait to, until the whole, until they're all collected in a graphic novel, or do you want to just get them as they come out? And for a long time, I did get them as they came out, but then, the older I got, the more I'm like, lazy I got, and I was like, yeah, just wait until it's all done, and then it'll be one giant story, and I can read it all at once. So
for sure. So, making your own comics, basically from as soon as I met you, was something that you were talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Being excited about. That was always something that was cool to you. Did that start before college, or did it really kind of calcify in the college years?
Actually, that definitely did start before college. I hesitate to go here. Because this is and will be an entirety of its own episode, but you know about my early, like preteen, creation, superhero that was influenced literally by everything I watched, and that includes all the stuff that I mentioned in DC Comics, especially Justice League. And Justice League and Batman Beyond. That was another huge one for me, influence.
Yeah.
But I created an early superhero of my own making called Heyman. And yes, it's exactly what I said. Hayman. Heyman. It has nothing to do with hay whatsoever. It was literally a Batman Beyond clone that was green instead of black. He had slight Green Lantern powers. His suit,
I thought he was
cybernetic.
Very Mega Man.
Influenced by that because the suit could transform, but also it was there was a green alien, like a guardian, like a Green Lantern guardian, mixed with one of those like aliens from Toy Story, infused into his suit, so it gave him like the slight Green Lantern powers. It could go interstellar, so he was also kind of
Blue
Iron
Beetle
Man.
in that way as well.
Yeah, exactly. It was like Blue Beetle. It was like Iron Man. It was like all these things put together. He had a vehicle, even though he could fly. He had a vehicle like the Batmobile. He had a friend. His best friend had his own suit that he built himself. Like Superman has, like, one of his best friends was Steel. Like, Steel was just a genius, and he just built all that stuff himself, which is another character in DC that is really cool. And the movie obviously doesn't do him any justice because he's actually super awesome in the comics. But Heyman was, I don't know where the name came from. I have no idea. I was trying to just come up with a name. And
I'm willing to bet $1 million that it was just like a series of sounds that you thought sounded cool. That was it.
That's exactly what happened.
So,
and a lot of it,
we can't spend too much time on Heyman, but I do want to emphasize how wild of a thing it was, because you would tell me about Heyman in college, and you'd be like, "Oh, it's ridiculous. This is the old thing I did when I was a kid." and you would outline genuinely multiple Infinity Sagas worth of stories.
And all of them were animated in comic form. Because I was like, when I get rich off of my comics, I'm going to make a show just like Justice League and Batman Beyond. And I'm going to make it expansive, like how Justice League had its first show running. And then it went to Unlimited. And I was like, I'm going to do that. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be so many characters. It's going to be so many storylines. Everybody's going to care. And everybody's going to love this. And I'm going to love it. And I'm just going to rewatch it over and over again. I'm going to be cool. It's not about being rich. I'm going to be cool. That's what and a lot of that was influenced by DC. Most of that, especially, this goes into like the beginning is I had a lot of action figures when I was growing up too. And I had boxes of random action figures and random like little toys that I would get out of Happy Meals that I would just get off random like festivals and yard sales and stuff that I would find that is just, oh, this is cool. Heyman was literally like a little based off the look was based off of a little character action figure I had his limbs couldn't even move, but his look was awesome. And I was like, I think it was just a robot. It was just a robot, but I was like, this would be cool as a suit. And I drew it, and I was like, yeah, oh, yeah, it's awesome, okay. And it just spiraled from there. Basically, I had so many, and that's how a lot of the characters in Heyman were created, was from different action figures and different stuff I had, but I based them on DC stuff. Not specifically, but a lot of Heyman, I had episodes upon episodes of them interacting with Batman, interacting with the Justice League. And I'm telling you, anything that influenced me back then, it was, especially in that first season, because yes, I did have seasons. I wrote out entire logs of episode summaries and stuff like that for seasons. And I'm talking each season had at least 50 episodes. I was insane.
It was
madness. I was insane. And this is a DC talk. But I was like, it was insane. And a lot of that had to do with what I was influenced with back the day. Like I said, especially something like, Justice League. Justice League was a huge one. Batman Beyond and Static Shock. And you notice that all three of those had prominent black characters in it. And that's the first thing I wanted to do. I was like, no, I'm going to do this. And it's going to be multicultural. And I wasn't even thinking about it critically back then. I was like, this is just what I want to watch. This is going to be cool. I want to be cool for creating this. They'll love me then. And we go into my childhood trauma. No, never mind. But anyway, yeah. So does that answer your question?
I mean, yeah, that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
I want you to share as much as you're comfortable sharing, but
oh no, that's fine.
I love hearing about all that stuff, and I love hearing the way that things influence you, because it was and now I think we're moving on to the second question, being a DC fan in college and how I got introduced to you, because I would say that was your prominent fandom when we first met. Like, if you were anything that I could label or identify, it would be a DC fan.
Yeah. I'm thinking back, I didn't think when you said that the first time, when you laid out those points, I was like, was I that big of a DC fan back then? And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, oh yeah, I kind of was, because I think Justice League was at the height of what he was doing. I don't remember when Young Justice started, but
I think it might have just started when we were.
I was huge into Young Justice. I still am. I still think that is DC's new thing. I hope it. I don't know if, judging by the whole HBO Max shakeup. I don't know if it's in limbo or not still yet, but I still think that is Warner Brother and DC's flagship in terms of animation and storytelling, animated wise and stuff. I think it's so good. So good. I'm like, this is what you guys need to lead with. Like, seriously, this is what you guys need to lead with. Like, all these other direct-to-video movies, I know you love Batman so much that you think you need to make 800 movies of different Batman stories, and while that's fine, I don't care. Let's that's not what you should lead with. I know that's a moneymaker, but that's not what you should lead with, because fundamentally, writing-wise and animation-wise, Young Justice is exactly what people are looking for, and people love it. The people speak all the time, and I'm one of them, about Young Justice and how that is still, in my opinion, the superhero show to watch on TV or like on streaming or whatever. All this other stuff is fine, but Young Justice still it hits every time. Each season is pretty good. Each season is good, and I was like, yeah, I love it. Still love it. It's great. So
totally.
And that, yeah, like you said, it started back in college, I'm pretty sure. So I was big into that. And
I think that it started when we were in college, and I definitely remember having multiple conversations. And there's part of it which it feels like I'm pandering to you, because I'm just like, yeah, but all the black characters are the coolest. But god damn it, they are, because like Black Manta and Aqualad are, without question, like the coolest part of that show to me. Like, I love that stuff.
Aqualad
is so complicated in a really fascinating way.
Yeah, Aqualad is easily my favorite. And not
one of the best costume designs in like comic book adjacent media. It was my favorite comic book design, I think, up until Spider-Gwen, now rebranded to Ghost Spider, I think.
I don't remember. They were flying off the rails with it. But that's cool, though. but
like, until then, like, he was my favorite costume for a long time. He so cool.
Funnily enough, I met the guy.
Yo, really?
I met the guy who did Aqualad, who did the voice of Aqualad, who is also the voice of Teen Titans, which is another one I completely slipped my mind.
Sure, not part of the Timverse, but definitely was influential back in its day.
Yeah, I met him. Where did I meet? I drew a picture, just a bust of Aqualad, and I was like, I am going, because a local con that I wanted to go to, a Comic-Con that I went to, and I took the picture there specifically because I wanted to get it signed by Cory Payton. Cory Payton is the voice of Aqualad. Excuse me. And he is also the voice of Cyborg in Teen Titans too. And
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Cool.
He does a lot of voice work. But he's, I don't want to say famous for Aqualad, but that's definitely a big one for him. And he enjoyed it. When I met him, because I actually met him there, I didn't get a picture with him because that would have cost money, unfortunately. But I did get him to sign my picture. And he's like, this was when season 3 just got announced, that they were coming back for season 3. Right. And so he was super excited. He's like, yes, we're back, baby. And I'm like, yes, I love you. And he is a huge inspiration to me, in terms of voice work too, because he enjoyed himself doing it. He's like, it's such an important character. We talked for about 15, 20 minutes. I was holding people up because I was talking.
That's so cool.
And he was really into it. He's like, because he was excited. A lot of people, he was there because of The Walking Dead. Specifically, obviously that's a huge thing. He was a huge character in that show. So a lot of people were there for The Walking Dead for him, but I pulled up with my Aqualad picture that I drew. And he's like, his face lit up. He's like, oh, yeah. He's like, we're coming back with season 3, right? I'm like, yes, I know. And he's like, yes, I'm so happy. Like, we talked for a little bit, and really, really nice guy. Really, really energetic, obviously. And that was just such a proud moment for me, because I got to kind of geek out with him, and he was geeking out too. He's like, yes. He's like, you watched the show? And I'm like, I watched all of it and I love it. He's like, yeah, I'm so happy about the response that, that people are giving for the character of Aqualad. We didn't know how it was going to work, but he's like, I'm very happy that people love that character. And I'm like, yeah, he's my favorite. He's obviously my favorite. And he's like, yeah, I wanted to do him justice. He's like, it's important. He's like, it's important for, not like the Black community to not only have Black leaders, because Aqualad does become a leader in that show, but he's also because he's cool anyway. And this is what I loved about that character. If I could just go on a little bit of a thing. And also this kind of is about, how I felt about it in college too, when I saw that character. And I didn't know it was going to go this way, but I am extremely impressed and love the fact that it went this way. And for all of you who watch Young Justice, you know that character of Aqualad is not only a leader, but he is also gay. And it's prominent in the other 2 seasons. I'm pretty sure it's in, I don't know if it's in 3, but I know it's in 4 and 5. But it's prominent. Like, he has a partner, and it's live. It's right in front. It's right in front and center. And that it doesn't take away from his character. It enhances his character. Like, it makes him that much cooler, in my opinion. I'm like, yeah, because all these characters have their own thing. They have their own personalities and whatnot, and their own lives. And that's the point, in my opinion, of how they did the show, which is why I like it. Even back then in college, it attracted me in a way that Justice League did way beforehand when I was a kid. And it felt like it built on that kind of structure with Young Justice. And I think the most prominent example of that is Aqualad. And what do you know? It happens to be a Black character who is also a merman, and he's also the leader, and he's also gay, prominently, and he's still cool. Like, it's
extremely cool.
It's so cool that they did that, and it's like, oh, what do you know? He's still the same person. Nothing has really changed. Nothing has changed. He's still
totally
a cool person. He's nothing. Like, I don't get why so many people. It's like, and this is on another rant, of course. I'm not going to go too much into it, but it kind of bothers me when people are like, "Oh, you made that character gay." I get it. If it's a company doing this, like putting that stamp on it and just saying, "Ha, see," yeah, it does feel fake. But in that show, especially, it felt very authentic, where they didn't just all of a sudden do things. It was a lead up and all this kind of stuff. And, they didn't make a huge deal out of it, but it was prominent in the show. It was prominent in the characters. And I was like, see, this is why this character is cool. This is why all these characters are cool. See?
Well, something that I'm going to, not just relevant here, I feel like this is going to come up a lot on the show, is that artists want to tell different kinds of stories, and character stories with Black characters or gay characters or whatever. They have wanted to tell these stories from the start, and it's studios and it's money people.
Oh, it's straight up money people. I mean, if you look at the biggest example in the last 5 years or whatever, Black Panther, biggest example of that. And I can only speak from a Black perspective, obviously. Like I can't speak from the LGBT Q plus like perspective, but I recognize that when they see great portrayals of the people that they want to see in film and media and different types of media period, they're jumping for joy just like how I jump for joy about Black Panther. And I'm like, wow, entire black cast. We did it. And
sure.
I mean, to be fair, Black Panther wasn't a, 100% great technical movie, but it was a huge cultural movie. And that's what made it happen because, and this is like the whole thing of, unfortunately, we had to appease like the executive gods, so to speak, because for the longest time, Black people don't make that money. They won't come out. They won't come out.
And that's really like the big thing about Black Panther is like majority black cast made $1 billion.
Oh yeah. And I saw it twice. I know some people that saw it 3-4 times. They brought people, you don't understand. I mean, if like certain extent, some people understand. If you have a big family or, if you're, part of the black community, you understand black people going in droves to the theater to have a good time. And I know some people that brought their entire families, old heads who usually aren't into superhero, like fantastic, special effects laden, flashy movies like that. They're like, no, I'm going to go see that Black Panther. And I'm like, yes, let's go see it again. Grandma, let's go. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to go see that Chadwick Boseman. I'm like, yeah, let's go. And we showed up. And that's when Disney was like, oh. And obviously, like these executives that are sitting in their high towers that are completely oblivious, they're like, I didn't know that was going to happen. We're like, what? It's the same thing what kind of happened with like the Wonder Woman, the first movie. Like,
it's a story that you see again and again and again, where it's these money people who are holding on to these old-fashioned ideas.
Yeah.
And it's just like the Legend of Korra. We can't have a lady as the main character. And it's like, actually, you absolutely can.
And a powerful lady that's buff. Like,
totally.
Yeah.
Like,
and brown skin. I don't know about that.
Talking about gay characters in animated television, I think Korra might have been the first one who I can remember being like pretty explicit. Hey, this is the main character. She's not straight. And we have to bend over backwards in order to portray that without offending people. And that sucks. But they were able to do it. And I feel like that to me was a turning point where afterwards we have seen a lot more representation. So, badass that Aqualad gets to not be straight. Steven Universe star versus the forces of evil.
I was just about to say Steven Universe, who also has another black character who is not straight, and it's Estelle.
Kipo in the Age of Wonder Beasts.
Yeah. I mean, and that people, and here's the thing. And I've been saying this forever is, guys, people, I'm not talking about everybody, because obviously we're in a different age. And people that are younger than us that are coming up are loving this. And they get it. And I'm like, yeah, cool. This doesn't hurt anything. More diversity, like I always use the example of Justice League, because if you go look back at Justice League and all of it, Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, it has so many different types of characters and so many different types of perspectives and so many different types of stories. Guess what? A lot of those stories are written by people that you would not even know, that you would not even guess. And it's like, see, this is what happens when we collab all together and make something great. I'm not saying that the show is perfect. There is no such thing as that. But it hit on multiple levels with multiple people throughout my life that I didn't even know they were into superheroes. And they said, yeah, I watched Justice League. That was awesome. And he was like, I like how they portrayed like Wonder Woman. She didn't play at all. And that was so cool because in that show, if you think about it, I had to go look back at it because I was having another conversation with one of my other friends. And I was saying, if you look back at that show, she was like not defeated. She was like never defeated. She never got, when she got beat up, she constantly got back up and won. I think she was only defeated once. And that was like a huge big deal. But in that show specifically, they wrote her as she is kind of the top of the top. Even if you come out and like try to attack her from like with 3 or 4 different superheroes, she'll still usually win. She's actually that powerful and that good. And I was like, and she was always respectful. She was never, she was always the rational one out of like the big 3, which is hilarious. Like, and I was like, that's really funny how they wrote her like that. And
I don't think that superhero stories need to feature role models. Like, I think it's okay to have anti-heroes or just flat out bad people who are the stars of your media. Depiction is not endorsement. I can watch Breaking Bad and know that Walter White is a fucking monster and still enjoy that show.
I mean, that's kind of the point, but yeah.
Yeah, well, but, there's a certain type of person who looks at that kind of media and is just like, well, obviously because they're the main character, I am supposed to empathize with them and relate with them. And like...
Yeah, like Joker syndrome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But the point is that Justice League, I think, really did have like a pretty great selection of role models where... they weren't just superpowered, but they were good in a way that, like, I feel like modern DC doesn't really lean into in the same way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to go into there yet until you're ready, like, because I know you have a structure, like for like the fan base and being a fan now, because that is definitely wades into how DC is now, but. Yeah, I completely 100% agree with you. Like at least during that time period, and a little bit afterwards and whatnot. I think that Justice League, especially, definitely, and it was the writing. You have to give it to the writers, the kind of the multicultural writers. Like I said, Dwayne McDuffie was a big one, because he was a pretty prominent black writer in the DC universe, period. He wrote on all types of DC shows. And it showed because some of the writing in those episodes were the best episodes. And it's heartfelt and he got it. That's the thing is you could tell like somebody different was writing this because why did that character say that? That's interesting. Not that the character is like bad for saying that or whatever, but where did they get that from? It's kind of how I felt about the kids show Craig of the Creek, where the main character's family is so there. That is my family. I told you this like months or years ago or something when last time we talked about this, and I showed you that show. I'm Craig. I was Craig as a kid. That was me. And I am not lying. That was me. Mm-hmm. I love to draw. I love to make maps. I was Craig. And I like grew up in the suburbs, and I had my parents are together and whatnot. They're still together and everything. Like I had both of my parents home. It's just that my parents were always working. So I was a latchkey kid. The only thing was I wasn't the oldest. I mean, Craig isn't the oldest. I was the oldest. So I was a little bit of Craig and I think Bernard. I think that's his older brother. I was more Bernard when I got older. I turned into him. But you know, it's I see myself in that. And that is so important. It is so important. That's why I fell in love with like Jon Stewart, because you know who he reminded me of? A mix of my dad and my uncle. Sure. That's who he reminded me of. And I was like, my uncle sounds like that. And my dad was in the military and everything. So I'm like, oh my goodness, this is my family. He talks even like subtle things that people would say to him. I remember this one episode where they went back in time to, I think, to help the Justice Society of America. And it was a different time period. So I think one of the superhero characters, I think it was like the Flash character of that time, said, oh, it's like, it's good to see you, son. You did good work. And he just said, son. And it was it was such a small thing. But I was like, oh, when I saw that, even as a kid, I was like, oh, they get it. These people get it. Now, they didn't make that episode about that, but it was a subtle thing that, oh, these people get it. Whoever's writing this, they get it. And I'm pretty sure that was Dwayne McDuffie who wrote it. So.
And I bet that as a kid that went over my head, because I just wasn't aware of that kind of thing yet. Yeah. I wasn't paying attention to it. But fact that
and I don't
that
blame
was there
you
for you, is really cool.
Yeah, and
again,
being clear, I'm not going to be mad that how did you not see this when you were a kid? I didn't see a lot of stuff when I was a kid. I'm not going to.
I'm talking about me. I'm talking about me meeting you in college. And let's be clear, like every other person who's starting college, I was a fucking idiot. And
oh, don't feel bad. I was too.
And I'm marginally better now.
I would hope that
we're better now. It's a lifelong goal. It's a lifelong goal to not be embarrassed by who I am actively. But at least I can not be who I was in college, so that's great.
I mean, if you're growing, you're doing good. Hopefully you're growing up and not growing down. But because that's how I was too. And I look back and I cringe at what I said and what I did too. And I was like, man, you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to say that. Why? What is wrong with you? But if in my opinion, how I see that is if I look back at that and I'm cringing, that means I'm different. If I look back and I'm like, exactly. Yeah, I was right. Yeah, I was right. I'll be like, yeah, you haven't learned, dude. But I look back at most of that stuff and I'm like, I am so cringe. I don't like this. I don't like it. It happened. Sure. It happened, but that's how you learn. But I still don't like it.
But yeah. So like all I'm saying is that maybe I wasn't aware of it at the time. I try to be aware of things now. I try to be more mindful. I hope I'm better.
That's all you can do is at least you're trying, and that is what counts. You're trying.
Yeah. I don't need to flagellate myself for being a dipshit in college.
You whip yourself on the back. Shame. How could you? No, but that was specifically, like I said, they didn't make the entire episode about that. That was just a little nod to, we understand the situation, and I got it. Like back then, I was like, oh, ooh, and that endeared me. That endeared me to the show more. And hey, guess what? Developers, guess what? Writers, artists that are making shows and movies and stuff. You know how you do that, right? You just care. care about what you're making and who is watching. I'm not saying you have to make the entire episode about certain things or whatnot, but in my opinion, and like I said, I am not a part of this community, but in my opinion, why I liked Cora's, gradual character arc is you could see the subtle hints of everything. And then when it came, it's like, oh, she's still Cora, but now she has this aspect of her life. Now, I appreciated that. I don't know how that community did, but I appreciated it. and I liked it. I was like, see, that's cool. I like that. This fits perfectly. It doesn't feel forced like so many things nowadays where it's like, nope, got to put that stamp on it to get that money. But, if you're actually being genuine about stuff, it's...
Yeah, I think you're exactly right that, like, all you have to do is care. Like, that's literally, like, 99% of it.
It's hard for people to do that, apparently, because a lot of stuff still falls short.
I know.
You can always tell when people are trying.
I also believe, like, what I was saying, like, one, artists have been trying to tell these kind of stories for as long as they have been making art. Yeah. And the fact that you're pointing out stuff that I didn't notice, like, I think is evidence of that. Like, they were putting in more, they were referencing more heavy subjects than I was even aware of at the time. And the fact that they did that makes me appreciate it more. But two, like, as far as, like, representation and just the seemingly never-ending argument for needing more of it, if we have... Look, 80% of all media is bad, and if we want more good representation, we just have to have more of it. And some of it is going to be bad, and that's okay, because 80% of everything is bad.
Yeah.
But, like, we just have to have more examples of it. And that's why things where, like, Black Panther is so great, because it's a majority black cast, and it doesn't need to be a monolith. Like, no one character is representing the black community. They were allowed to have a bunch of different body shapes and hairstyles and skin tones and perspectives, and, it just gets to be more stuff. Something that I think wouldn't have happened without Black Panther is the new Predator movie that came out recently.
Which is awesome.
It is awesome. It's a really fun movie. And it features, a majority Native American cast, First Nations cast. Mm-hmm. And it's, I think, like, an important part is, like, they get to have their own perspective. They get to have a movie where they represent themselves and show how they would like to be represented. Mm-hmm. What does that look like? And they're like, well, I just want to have a kind of kick-ass movie where I beat the shit out of an alien.
And they're like,
it doesn't have to be complicated.
Exactly. That's what's cool about, and that brings us back to Blade. I know that's not a DC character, but that brings us back to Blade is a vampire, half vampire, who's a vampire hunter.
It rules.
That is you like during a time when vampires were a huge thing. Like, you have Underworld, and did Van Helsing come out during that time? And,
Van Helsing was earlier, and Van Helsing was way after, actually. It was like 2004. Blade was 98.
Okay, yeah. I don't even remember. That's all a blur. That time. But I was like, you're having a lot more... We're just talking about genre, but, we're having a lot more, at least black voices in horror now, too. And Blade was technically an action horror movie back then. And nobody bat an eye. When it's like, oh, we have a prominent black character who is also half vampire, and and that's cool. That's okay. That's that's perfectly fine. We appreciate this, but you're absolutely right about people need to be mindful and here's what people need to do. Already creators in your space. Be mindful of what you create. Oh, in the space itself, the studios. Hey, let some people in. Let new people in. Let people that, hey, I have an action movie. I'm a part of, like, the LGBT community. I want to make an action movie. You come right on in here. You sit at that table and you do what you need to do. We want more. Give us more. All more. That's what I'm talking about, studios. Just do it. Don't think that every black person wants to make a certain type of movie. Or, to be honest, every white person wants to make every different type of movie. Hey, guys, branch out, okay? I'm not saying you have to do, I got to put this in here, because when you start making a checklist, that's when it starts getting bad.
Yeah. No one wants tokenism. No one's arguing for tokenism.
Yeah. Be intentional. Be intentional. And also just make what you want to make. Like, I use Steven Spielberg as kind of an example. Now, like I think of something like Jurassic Park, obviously, where, from a kind of like a woman's perspective, like the main woman character in that movie is pretty awesome. She's not dumb. She's not ditzy. She's kind of one of the smartest people there. And it's very interesting. Now, obviously, you have Samuel L. Jackson, who's one of 3 black people in the movie. But also, I just like the fact that he's prominent. And let's be honest, a lot of people are getting eaten. So it sucks that he didn't survive that. But I still appreciate that he was prominently in it. And he was like I know it's a trope now, like the black hacker, but he was an old black hacker. And also it's Samuel L. Jackson. So it's like not your stereotypical, thing. It's still really funny. It's still a great, role in my opinion. But, Steven Spielberg, he just wanted to make a movie about dinosaurs and he just put people in it, like actual people. Who knew that actual people exist in stuff?
Sure.
Like,
and people come in a bunch of colors and shapes and sizes. And when it comes to diversity and representation, like, it's also just stuff like different body shapes. Like, I want everything to be Team Fortress 2, where people have like recognizable silhouettes. You know, I don't like it when like you have 3. Like, I remember this being a big complaint of mine with like the Warhammer movie. It's just like there's 4 middle-aged, like 30-something white guys with beards and brown hair, and I can't tell anyone apart.
Wait. Hold on a second. Crazy. Hold on a second. Warhammer movie? There was a Warhammer movie?
Yeah. Oh, it's awful. It's one of my least favorite.
That's probably why I don't remember it.
It's by Duncan Jones. The director is Duncan Jones, who is the son of David Bowie, who previously made the movie Moon, which is like one of the really best fucking science fiction movies of the decade.
Warhammer movie.
It sucks. I had zero fun watching it. Like, not ironic fun.
Hey, Warhammer movie 2020?
No.
2022?
Oh, I said Warhammer. I went Warcraft. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
The Warcraft movie.
Warcraft. Okay. Yeah, the World of Warcraft
Same.
I was like, Warhammer? What? No, Warcraft. I did see that. And I didn't understand it. And I was like, okay. All right. But, I mean, at the same time, though, I thought, these, the fans of it probably liked it. And I found out the fans didn't like it. And I was like, ooh, my bad.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And this isn't about that. It's just about, like, that trope of, like, I don't want people to be too similar. I remember, like, even though obviously they're very different, and I love it now, when I first saw Lord of the Rings in theaters as a kid, I had trouble keeping Aragorn and Boromir separate. Like, it's just like, they're just like a couple of white dudes with brown hair and beards, and it's just like, I don't know, I just got them confused at a couple points. And just make people look different. I don't know. It's cool. It's good.
I mean, and it also feels more, in my opinion, it feels more, I hate to keep using the word authentic, but it feels more real. I hate to say that too, because it's like fantasy and stuff like that, but the world feels more grounded. That's a better word. Like, because, and that's been a problem with a lot of science fiction from in the past, is science fiction was always, there's a lot of, everybody's white. Like, there's no black people who exist in the future. And that was a huge meme too. It's like black people don't exist in the future.
Totally.
But nowadays you see a lot more of like post-apocalyptic movies and films and all kinds of stuff where there's just black people everywhere. And I'm like, okay, that feels more realistic. And not only that, but now they're starting to go into different ethnicities too, where, you know, wow, this person isn't even from around here. Or, you know, oh, wow, there's so many Hispanic people around now. And I'm like, yeah, that's going to happen. That's definitely going to happen. What, you think everything happens in, you know, United States? Yeah, true. But yeah, it's
totally.
So let's be a little bit more diverse in everything nowadays, guys. And I think DC, at least now they are being a little bit more intentional with that, and I appreciate that. So
yeah, I basically see it purely as a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that's a lot of words to talk about you liking DC Comics in college, huh? What about let's wrap around to the subject a little bit more. That was a really good digression, and I'm glad that we did that.
Okay.
But yeah, so one of the things that I like really remember first meeting you is that you had these huge DC Comics omnibuses that were like not full of comics, but full of just like
information.
Information. It was like a world Bible, and it had information on all the characters and a bunch of locations and just tons and tons of art. They were like cool coffee table books.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know if that was something that was, you know, as special to you as maybe I give it weight, but I just remember, I don't know, like really strongly associating that with you. I remember it being
Yeah. I still have those. I still have those, by the way. And that was a big thing because back then when I was heavy into wanting to create my own universes, that's what it's called now, but my own worlds, my own, you know, I love world building.
Yeah.
Which is probably why I like a lot of authors that do world building really well. And you know, so like Neil Gaiman is literally one of my all-time favorite authors because his world building is kind of stupid. It's kind of ridiculous. And I say stupid as in like super good. It's like it's stupidly good.
Complex, intricate.
Yeah. And I you know, that's what I kind of want to aspire to be. But even back then in college, yeah, it was so those kind of, like you said, world Bibles were very much something I dug into a lot. And even when I would see, because they would be updated too. When I would go to the store every couple of years, I would see a new one. It's like, oh yeah, this is the new version, like, you know, new like version of it. And I would look through it and see what has changed and what's different and what they added and whatnot. And I'm like, ooh, this is super interesting. I always found that stuff very interesting. And yeah, that was a big, once I started to actually be serious about art and serious about writing for comics and stuff, I definitely looked into that more because of how stories were told and how characters interacted with their world and with each other, and in a meaningful way, especially when it comes to DC Comics, where, you know, like stuff got out of hand real quick. When you have like a Superman character, but how does he interact with, you know, the rest of the characters there, and, you know, the villains? How can you make a villain threatening, but not just keep going big, because there is a thing where you just can't keep doing that. And I'm like, okay, sure, this is what you do. This is how they did it, or this is what you can do. And a lot of that comes from me looking over, you know, those books. And I still, like I said, I still have them, and they still have like folds in certain pages so I don't lose track of stuff. But Yeah. I obviously I don't look at that as much anymore. Obviously, I haven't picked them up, but I still have them. I don't think I'll ever get rid of them because, it's still, you can still learn stuff from there. Even though the internet exists, I still like having hard copies of some things, and you still learn from that. Yeah. But that was a big part of college, my creative side of college, basically. That's what I would say.
Totally. Okay, let's pivot to the last part. What's it like being a DC fan now? How has it changed in the last, decade or so? Because I think it's changed a lot.
It is,
alas,
tiring. It's still fun, but it is tiring. And I think that is for me, I think that is a very apt describer, I guess, an adjective for basically the majority of DC fans right now. It's tiring. It's still fun, but it's tiring because of the industry. I think I'm going to be that guy. I'm just going to say this right now because this is that hot take, guys. This is the title has been said. This is a half-tone hot take. I think that the direction cinematically that DC is going is good. I think that the direction they're taking is good. I don't necessarily like the direction they started with, but I think the direction they're heading is good.
Okay, I'm going to pause you there and just ask you to clarify because, what does that mean? Because there was the Snyderverse to start with. Okay, first of all, we're talking about the modern incarnation of the DC Extended Universe. So we're talking about, the Nolan movies were huge when we were in college, and actually we probably should have spent some time talking about those.
I mean, I figured that's part of the modern... I figured that's kind of the modern take, though, because that still resonates in a certain way. But yes, you can keep going. Sorry.
Right. So what I was asking is we're talking about post that with the start of the modern DC extended universe with Snyder's Man of Steel being the first entry. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I enjoyed the first half of Man of Steel. I thought they got it right for the first half. I thought it was very much more melancholy, and I loved that direction. And then obviously they went off the rails, and that's a whole nother discussion. But I wasn't mad about it. I just I don't know what they're going for with this now. Well, we'll see. And then with every movie after that, I kept saying, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. And I felt
but things were dire there for a while.
I
would agree that they've pulled up a little bit, but
I was going to explain that me saying we'll see is not good. Me saying we'll see, like me personally saying we'll see is probably not a good sign because if I'm usually hopeful when it comes to things like this, especially in the early days of things, but me starting to say, we'll see, is literally my excitement starting to go down, which means that I'm not really caring about certain things. And I'm not saying I am the standard. Everybody should go by my reviews and my opinions. No, I'm not saying that.
Listeners at home, I want you to know he is lying. He does want his standard is the only one that matters. Don't believe anything he says.
Yes,
otherwise.
the Brandon Ruth Superman, that is the best one. Everybody go back to that. Everybody go back to that one. I honestly do think that is another hot take, though. I do think that Superman story is a little bit better story-wise, writing-wise. But, the current state, from Man of Steel onward, it did get pretty bad, especially Batman v Superman. I felt that was a huge misstep in what they were trying to go for. I know what you guys were trying to do, but it's too quick. That was the biggest issue I had with the startup of the Snyderverse is Everything is too quick. Everything is too quick. I want at least 2 more Superman movies before you even touch this guy over here or what have you. I don't want to hear it. Go through, take it slow like Marvel did, but they wanted it now. The studio wanted it now, and they had so many ideas so quick. And I'm like, they fumbled the ball. They got too greedy. And I'm sure most people who are into this stuff, they know this. And the Snyder Cut isn't going to save it. It was already done. And there's things that I liked about those movies and whatnot. There's things that I liked, but overall, I was very nonplussed until recently, when the direction for I'm gonna give a shout out to Black Adam and The Rock, because I think that's perfect casting. And apparently, he's wanted this for like 10 years. He's been working behind the scenes to get this role and to get this thing going. And I've been reading some stuff and been looking at some stuff. They're trying to go back. They're trying to kind of reboot the whole DC universe to more of a Justice Society type thing. And me knowing comic lore and stuff like that, I'm like, oh, okay. That fits more with the tone of what DC is trying to do and separate themselves from Marvel. And I think that is a good thing to do. I think that's a good tone to go towards. And what I mean is it's darkness. It's like kind of dark and more brooding, but in the right way, as opposed to what Snyder was trying to do. This is more of a tone shift that Marvel, like, it's different from Marvel. I'm just going to leave it at that. Is different from Marvel. And they're trying to do kind of their own thing. They're trying to create their own universe and their own lore. They're, like I said beforehand, they're trying to reboot the whole thing. And at least that's what I see. And that, for one, makes me excited for Black Adam, because it does feature The Rock, and he is a man of color in the biggest prominent role in a very long time. He is a Superman figure in this movie, which is a big deal. That is kind of a big deal because you don't see a lot of. Besides, I was talking about Milestone Media earlier. One of the Superman icon, his name is Icon, but the Black Superman, basically. And a lot of people, I was talking to some people that I know, and they're like, I didn't know who that was. Is he new? I'm like, he has been there for a very long time. So I was like, yeah, that's an important, like, cultural thing, because you don't see a lot of Black Supermen or like to that status. So to me, that's a big deal. In the fact that he is just angry, that's also really funny to me. And I was like, yeah, you got to do some damage, man. You are not Superman. You can't be playing around with these people. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that is a good start. Hopefully they pull it off. Hopefully it ends up being a pretty decent movie, even if it's not like technically great, but at least the effects look good and stuff like that. But and it looks thrilling and whatnot. It looks entertaining. We'll wait until we see it, obviously, but I think they're going in a good direction, because then they have a chance to kind of make their own slow universe that people probably aren't used to, because the Justice Society has been around in DC Comics, since we're talking kind of about comics too. And that is a different roster. It had a different roster. It had different foes. It had different adventures that they went on, but it's still part of the lore that probably a lot of people don't, like, the mainstream doesn't even know about. So it's a great way to kind of reboot everything and just, take it in a direction that I think Warner Brothers should have been doing in the first place. Like, we talked a tiny bit about, like, Joker, and how they're doing a lot more mature stories in, like, in universe type thing. And while Joker isn't really connected to anything else, but a lot of more stuff is grounded. For example, Suicide Squad, the Suicide Squad. That was fantastic. But
yeah,
there was so much lore stuff in that film. It was ridiculous. I can't believe it. I can't believe James Gunn. But that's the thing is, I was like, while I was watching, I was like, James Gunn is a fan. You don't do this stuff
for sure,
or say some of this stuff without knowing how this in-universe DC stuff would actually work in this way. And I think, I don't think all the films have to be like that, because I don't think that's a good tonal thing. But I like the fact that the Suicide Squad was kind of like that. It was a rated R, basically, version of what was it? It's not Captain Marvel. It's Shazam. Because I also enjoyed Shazam. I thought it was just a fun movie of being goofy, and I was like, "See, that's really funny," sure. And I like it also because that's how kids see, not like babies, not teenagers, kids see superhero stuff. And I was like, okay, I see what you did there. I like that. I like this direction. And obviously there's Aquaman, which was just completely crazy. But yeah.
I want to know what, like, slightly zoomed out, like, how you're feeling about the bigger picture of them, like, first of all, splitting their continuity, where they're not worried about everything being connected like Marvel. They're allowed to have a Joker, they're allowed to have the Batman, and not, be absolutely beholden to the continuity that they've created, that they, in my opinion, clearly don't care that much about.
Yeah.
And also, like, whether or not the number of R-rated superhero movies that DC is putting out is something that you're into, or do you feel like, and this is a really subjective question, do you feel like it's what you would have wanted as a fan as a kid, or where, like, the stories are growing up with you and they're able to tell more quote-unquote mature stories, whether or not they're mature or being juvenile with their violence is kind of beside the point. But, taking on some of this more serious subject matter, taking on some more serious violence, and kind of growing up with their audience versus staying in kind of the PG-13 realm, staying a little bit more family-friendly, and being more inclusive because of that. I think that there's... Whether or not you like an R-rated superhero thing is a different question than if you feel like it's a good thing that they're making it more exclusively for adults rather than focusing on a more all ages thing, which again, I'm trying not to, like, sound like a prude about this, because I don't think that it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing. But I think the fact that, like, oh, I'm a kid and I love Batman. Batman's cool. And then my parents now have to really give a serious think over whether or not I should see Batman v Superman or The Batman.
The Batman. I was going to say, The Batman's pretty brutal.
Pretty intense movies. Yeah. Like,
the Batman is definitely has an R cut somewhere.
Oh, for sure.
Because when I was watching that, I was like, ooh, got him type thing. But yeah,
yeah,
that's a good question. I mean, like, I'm speaking as a DC fan. I honestly don't necessarily mind, like, R-rated movies, especially superhero R-rated movies. I think DC does that better than Marvel does. And this is taking into account to, like, Deadpool, which is still pretty entertaining. But I think DC likes to be a little bit more artful with it. And I use that term kind of loosely because Joker is definitely, like, Joker's a DC character. I'm sorry, guys. Even though the movie has its own continuity, it's a DC character. But that's their interpretation, and it's definitely way more mature about it. And it's not, and I don't think that's violence for violence' sake either. Now, I think Suicide was that way. The Suicide Squad, I think that was specifically like that on purpose. However,
sure,
if you know anything about the Suicide Squad, and I like the fact that the movie explains it because the previous movie did not very well. It didn't ramp up that kind of tension and say, we're called the Suicide Squad for a reason. This is how bad this stuff gets. This is the point.
Yeah, I think it justifies its rating because it does need to show the ridiculous body count as part of the core premise of the thing. Yeah,
this wouldn't work any other way. That's the whole thing. It wouldn't work any other way because this is the Suicide Squad. We're literally sent into an impossible situation that is already going to have a high body count, expecting not to live.
Yep.
And most of us won't, because even if we escape and the job isn't done, we die anyway. So that is the point of the Suicide Squad. And I thought James Gunn pulled it off pretty well and told a heartfelt story. Believe it or not, it was a heartfelt story. And I didn't think it was going to be. But I was like, aw.
Yeah.
I was looking at it. I was like, why do I feel bad? I don't feel like, I'm like, aw, I understand what you did there. I feel bad, but not that bad because, mind you, the main character,
King Shark is baby and must be protected at all costs.
Yeah, but even he is a horrible person. And I was like, yeah, I never got the feeling that what they were doing with the first Suicide Squad. They were trying to make them more heroes. In the Suicide Squad, they are clearly all horrible. They are bad guys, but they are protagonists. I think that line is they did that very well in that movie. That's what I wanted to see.
The trajectory from Suicide Squad to the Suicide Squad is like one of the greatest redemption arcs in in cinema.
It's hard to do, but it's possible.
We spent many long conversations incredulous at the original Suicide Squad and being like, it's not that complicated, you guys. I don't know how you did this.
It's studio shenanigans. I honestly, honest to goodness, believe that it's studio shenanigans.
I don't think so. I think that
they thought they wanted one thing. They were trying to cash in on one thing, and they forgot about the story. They forgot about the movie that they were making because they're like, we'll just put in catchy songs in there. We'll have Margot Robbie barely wearing anything and, like bending over at inappropriate times and thinking it's funny and all this kind of stuff. We won't kill actual people. We'll kill, shadow monsters or whatever they were doing. I'm like, there is no danger here. We'll only have one person explode from trying to get away. And nobody what is the point of this? What is the point of this? Because the entire time I was thinking, where the hell is Superman? Superman could have taken care of this in 2 seconds. Where is he? That sounds like really, uppity. And it's like, oh, you're one of those fans. But no, if you think about it, because I never thought that with the Suicide Squad, because it was literally one of those situations where, oh, nobody wants to touch this. Nobody wants to touch this situation. Nobody wants to go near that. So, of course, you would send in the Suicide Squad to get the job done because they don't actually care. They don't care about killing innocent people that are that are zombies now and trying to kill them and stuff. Like, whatever.
Ultimately, it's just about the movie doing the work.
Yes.
To justify and explain things, and also to have a situation that calls for the Suicide Squad, because that's my biggest thing is that they were clearly the wrong people for the job before you even get into the fact that they created the mistake that they needed to clean up. They made a Suicide Squad and then that went bad, so they made another one to throw good money. It's ridiculous.
I always compare it to the one Really quick jump back, but I always compare it to the one that is in Justice League, where it's called Task Force X. And there's a specific episode that is about the Suicide Squad, but they're called Task Force X. You can't say Suicide Squad in a cartoon. Yeah. But it was an impossible mission. Literally steal from the Justice League. So you can't call a hero to do that. And they're like, "Are you crazy? We have to teleport onto the watchtower, be surrounded by superheroes who will literally kill us if we make a wrong move, and steal something that is very important and is in high under wraps and all this kind of stuff." And I'm like, that makes sense. And what do you know? One of them actually failed in that, like, spoiler alert, but it's been out for years. But one of them actually failed. But I needed a situation like that, and the newer Suicide Squad provided that. And going back to your original point, because I'm looping back around, is if it's very situational. I do not mind. I think it's actually pretty bold of DC to be able to do this. Tell these types of stories in possibly an R-rated setting. But, to that point is the Suicide Squad is the only one that I can think of where that gratuitous violence will probably skirt my, my sensibilities, because I'm like, okay, this makes sense. But if you're just doing it just to do it, then I think you're missing the point of the opportunity that you have to tell good stories in the DC universe, with the characters that you have. It can be mature without being crazy. I think, though I'm not I didn't love it, but the Joker is kind of an example of that, where you tell kind of a taxi driver story, and it wasn't gratuitous. Like, there wasn't gratuitous violence in it. Like, people get shot up, but it's nothing like crazy, like, people getting exploded and guts and limbs flying everywhere.
It's not the Suicide Squad, which is so ludicrous.
Yeah. I don't, if it's, because the thing is, I say that because the Suicide Squad was popular. It made a lot of money and it was very popular. So I don't want WB to look at that and be like, okay, all of our stuff has to be like this because that's what made the money. No, that's not what made it. It worked here because people got it. It made sense in universe, but you can't do that for everything. So I'd appreciate it if you didn't do it for everything. I appreciate it if you did have fun movies like Aquaman or Shazam or something like that, or even to a point like the new movie Black Adam coming out. Or how about you can still have PG-13 movies or what have you, like the Dark Knight trilogy or the Batman. The Batman was almost, I don't want to say perfect, but I like that aesthetic a lot because it showed the violence, but it wasn't super gratuitous, but you knew it could have been. And I was like, see, I like this tone. I like this tone a lot for Batman, for future Batman stuff.
Yeah, I think I liked that movie. I liked it a lot more than the Joker movie. Mm-hmm. That's one of the hardest PG-13 ratings I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah. Like, it gets pretty really close.
Amazing that it's not R.
Yeah.
Which to me, like, kind of proves some of the pointlessness of the rating system, where the rating system is broken. Loose guideline. It's not anything other than that.
I remember doing I had to write a speech and do research back in college. I had to, for one of my communications classes, I chose a topic about the rating system and how it's kind of weird and messed up and doesn't make any sense anymore because it's actually, the rating system isn't bad. It's just outdated. And they don't want to change it, like the music industry's copyright system. But that is a whole nother episode. We're not going to get into that. But
yeah. Have you seen the documentary "This Movie Is Not Rated"?
Oh, yes.
Right. Yeah. Listeners, watch that if you want to really get a bleak look at absolutely how arbitrary it is, because it's just some guys going off gut checks. It's really nothing else.
And And the thing doesn't change because everybody's too lazy to change it. And that's the entirety of the whole thing. People are too lazy to change it. And it's worked for this long. And if people change it, then everything gets out of whack. And obviously, people lose money in certain places. But it's lame. I mean, if anything, they just need to be rewritten completely or have more ratings. But that's a whole nother discussion. But what DC is doing right now, I think, is a good step forward because already they have a different thing for what Marvel is doing, which is they're being a little bit more mature about their storytelling. I'm not saying Marvel doesn't have any mature stories, but they're being intentionally like, if you don't like certain themes or what have you about heavy abuse or, sexual tension or what have you, don't watch The Joker. Don't just think that this is just
a more adult
audience. And that's fine. I like that because I like variety. And it looks like what they're trying to do is create a little bit more of a variety in their universe. And I appreciate that. But you got to follow through with that. And I think it's just about direction. They need an overarching direction with, how they do their projects. Now, whether they're going to get that is it's anyone's guess. We'll see in like a couple of years what they're doing.
You ended up being a little bit more optimistic than I expected. So good to hear.
I'm feeling that way.
So that's it for this episode. I have been Adam Bucheri. I'm an animator and game designer. You can follow me on Twitter at Adam Bucheri, and you can find my tabletop games at bucherry.itch.io. That is boo like ghost, cherry like fruit.
And I have been Cory Revis. I'm an illustrator and comic creator. You can find me on Twitter at @theeaker. That's EACR, all one word. And on Instagram at Earther1. That's EARTHUR_1.
Okay. Getting late.
Yes.
Good talk, buddy.
Yes, that is a good talk. All right. Love you, buddy.
You hang up.
No. You first. Okay, we'll hang up on 3. We'll hang up on 3, okay?
Okay.
1,
2, 3.
3. Okay, hang up.
Okay, bye.
See ya.